Welcome, everyone who's here. Thank you all very much for being here. I'm glad that you're in Athens and that you've been exhibiting at Atlanta Contemporary. And thank you, Tif, for answering the call and being so willing to work with us and present in Contemporary on site. So we're very grateful for your work. Atlanta Contemporary has made a decision, and even though we're virtually gathered, we still have a very specific campus and place and space in the city. And so we have begun this current fiscal year acknowledging our land. So Atlanta Contemporary occupies the land of the Muskoke, the Muskogee Creek Nation. These individuals were forcibly removed against their will, and we reap the benefits of their turmoil. Our occupation of this land is an act of privilege. We acknowledge this land and their legacy. So I'd like to say thank you as well to all of our sponsors and donors and members. During these unprecedented times, your support and donation means even more. And so we are grateful for your contributions. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists. And I have a question to start us off, and then we'll have it be a little bit more informal and casual amongst our three speakers today. So Tif Sigfrids is a gallerist based in Athens, Georgia. She received her BFA from UCLA in 2005 and has organized numerous exhibitions, performances, and lectures at galleries, nonprofit art spaces, and universities. Her eponymous gallery opened in Los Angeles in 2013 and relocated to Athens in 2018. Exhibitions have been reviewed in Artforum, the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, New York Magazine, and numerous other publications. Wow. Gracie Devito, born in Los Angeles, California, lives and works in Los Angeles. She received her MFA from Cal Arts in 2012. Her work was the subject of a recent solo exhibition at Overdoin & Co. and has been reviewed in Artforum, the New York Times, and numerous other publications. And Andy Giannakakis lives and works in Los Angeles, but was born in Valdosta, Georgia. He has a BFA from the University of Georgia and received his MFA from RISD in 2015. His recent solo exhibition at Parkview was reviewed in the Los Angeles Times. So welcome, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So Tif, I'm going to start us off with a question for you. And I know that you've recently announced that you're going to be moving the gallery, which is very exciting. Can you give us a brief description of the intent of your gallery, so its mission and vision, and what makes it distinct and the role that you play in the arts ecosystem?
When I opened the gallery in Los Angeles in, about 2013, is that what it said?
I think so.
I was opening the gallery really to just be able to work with people that I had kind of collaborative relationships with prior to opening the gallery. So I opened the gallery with a show of a friend of all of ours, Joe Sola, and just kind of kept going from there. But I had been working in the art world in LA for some time, and just finally felt like it was time to have my own space to be able to do some of the projects that I wanted to do. And that included early on performances with Gracie. So I kind of liked thinking of the gallery as like not only just an exhibition space, but a space where I could host performances, comedy shows, lectures, small concerts. I mean, it was a small storefront space. And, moving the gallery here kind of shifted that slightly. I mean, I still try to do all of that, but there's like this added dimension of having a gallery in a place where there isn't really like a community of its kind somehow. So I still represent artists, all the artists I worked with in LA and some artists in New York and Europe, in addition to trying to reach out and do projects that are meaningful locally. So with people who have connections to Athens or this region. And I recently moved spaces. So an artist who moved here shortly before I did, Ridley Howard from New York, he and I shared the space that we had in Athens originally. And he would do shows and I would do shows simultaneously. And then we would also invite curators to put together small shows of artists from outside of the area. And now it's kind of shifting a little bit. So I'm moving to a space that's even further out in this small town called Comer that has about 1,000 people. And I'll have, there were pretty limited hours here, but there'll probably be even more limited hours there. So it'll be more like a destination that people can drive there on a Saturday or by appointment. And I'll probably, hopefully be able to, once the world opens up a little bit more, kind of reincorporate the other aspects of the gallery that were important to me when I started it, like the performances and lectures and stuff. And this space is kind of more suited for that anyhow.
Thank you so much. It's great to have you here and your perspective here, though Athens and Comer are a little bit away. I know that particularly people who are on this call or Zoom really appreciate your voice in this landscape. So we're grateful that you're here and doing this work.
It's great to be here.
Yeah.
On this porch.
We come visit quite often.
Yeah.
So
let's go ahead and kind of talk about the work that's on view and that's at Atlanta Contemporary, because it was very exciting to get your pieces. And I think one of the things that's really remarkable for the space is Contemporary on Site invites artist-run spaces to come and curate and harken back to our founding as an artist-run space. And, everyone imagines this round kind of strange gallery in such a different way. And we've never had it so minimally installed. And it's really quite beautiful and remarkable because it really centers the work. So Tif, if you want to talk about your impetus behind the curation.
Sure. I mean, I tend to like that. When I opened my gallery, actually, there was nothing in the space during the first show. So I'm a fan of minimal things. But my idea, because there wasn't that much time to really organize, I tried to think efficiently of a meaningful show. And Andy and Gracie are, close friends of mine, and they happen to be married. And we've all spent a lot of time together, looking at art, traveling, and they spent a lot of time looking at art together. And I've always thought it's interesting that they look at so many of the same things, or basically all of the same things, but they have each their own really distinct painting languages. And it's been really interesting to see them evolve over time. And so I've kind of always thought, well, it would be interesting to show their work together. And in this case, in light of everybody being isolated, I thought it's a nice idea to have a really small show that the viewers can sort of be isolated with these works and really hone in on them, rather than, trying to fill the space, just to give. I think also Andy and Gracie's paintings can both be very poetic and kind of meditative to look at. So I wanted to provide that the option for that experience for people. And I'm glad that the space is open so that people can actually go in and see the work. I've been getting people have been texting me images when they go to see the show. And so,
oh, that's great.
And people seem to get it, that there is this nice, almost I don't know what you would say, chapel-like space or something to kind of look at.
Yeah, it definitely, the way it's lit, it really does center the works, and it kind of draws people in. And the way people engage and enter the space, it's often the first pieces that they see, and then they kind of, move through. So that's really fantastic. So I'll kind of let you all take it from here a little bit and have a conversation. I'm happy to pepper with questions as well. But yeah, so I guess, to introduce Gracie and Andy and, a little bit more about you all and your work.
I mean, maybe it's easiest to just talk about the individual paintings in the show, because the painting for Gracie, at least, is kind of, it was made recently, since in the last 7 months.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't know, maybe you just want to talk about it.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think I go in my practice, very often I'll make things completely internally, just me and the canvas and stuff. And then I just as much almost make drawings of other people's work. And transcriptions, and I even try to draw from life pretty regularly, and especially at different moments. Like I had just finished a whole body of work to be in this show in LA, and then got back to my studio basically at the beginning of the lockdown, and was kind of, it was almost like starting afresh. And so a place I like to start is from other people's work and work that I admire. So I started kind of like redrawing this image that also had like a content and like a feeling that I really liked, you know, and then made a bunch of like different individual kind of versions of this piece. And it kind of like loosens me up and gets me back into painting again when I've finished a body of work and I'm like, you know, almost don't know where to start. So to kind of, to start with transcriptions is a nice way to just get yourself moving and painting again, without necessarily having to think too much about what the meaning is, because all that meaning's already there for you in the history of the work and stuff. And then, so that's how the painting started. And then it's always a different story when you get to put something with someone else's painting, and then, you know, you don't know what's going to happen, but you have to think about that later. So.
Yeah, those paintings were never meant to be shown together. I mean, the funny thing, like Gracie and I both, we go to each other's studios pretty regularly, but we never bring, you know, we never really look at our work together. So it's kind of nice to see that. I mean, like Gracie will do a lot of work on her paintings, like out of the studio too. Like she'll be like right before she goes to sleep working on them on her phone in like a paint app or something. And so I'll see them in weird kind of like experimental stages too. And it's like, it's kind of like, you know, her paintings are made like throughout the entirety of a day almost, not even in her studio. And it's kind of different. The way I paint is I take massive breaks in between working on my paintings, and I work on a big group, but some of those paintings I won't work on for 2 or 3 months. And those, you know, that's for drying time and to get them to age and patina in certain ways. But we have my method is very kind of slow and kind of hermetic, and I think Gracie's is kind of more like all the time, active. And so but when we go and look at paintings or when we travel, you know, we went to Italy last summer on our honeymoon, and we went to the Scrivini Chapel in Padua, which is this amazing chapel that Giotto painted. And we both looked at that and were, you know, in agreement on like everything we loved about it. But then, you know, we get home into our own studios and then we just take inspiration in completely different ways. You know, like I couldn't really paint after seeing that for, you know, 2 or 3 months. It kind of like paralyzed me. But Gracie was like right away painting. And so it was really cool. But, you know, people marinate on stuff in their own way. And so it's nice to see those two paintings together, you know.
So I think that's really kind of fascinating, right? That Giotto chapel being, as you said, paralyzing and yet also activating. So have there been other instances where that has happened, where you've similarly seen something and that has been the case? Or
John, we've seen a lot of art together. I mean,
even in like,
I mean, the last time we were in
temporary,
we saw a really good Elizabeth Murray show in New York, maybe 2 years ago. And I remember that show really making me want to not even, I was like, oh, I should become a sculptor or something, or I should quit painting, and then I remember it kind of like made you want to like just make your paintings so much thicker.
Yeah. And I was like less afraid to like build, because she could, I don't know, I mean, whether she did it or had someone do it, but help, these constructions are pretty like, rickety. You see the plywood like backing and stuff.
Yeah, they're very like homemade paintings.
Yeah, and I had also been at the time like learning not a lot, but trying to pick up on like some of the things, like advice that Andy could give me about like carpentry, and like we went through like, I mean, maybe the most time we've spent in my studio together was Andy like teaching me some carpentry tips and stuff, because I ended up like doing construction on some of my paintings. Like sometimes I'll end up shaping the canvas or the stretcher or even the frame. So I don't know, we kind of play off of each other in that way too, just in terms of the structure of our work and the materials.
Yeah, I mean, we have kind of similar, I guess, prejudices in painting too. Like we both love painting from the 80s, like that was like more of a reaction to like, minimalism and conceptual art, more of like a return to, like arte povera and like handmade work and neo-expressionist painting in the early 80s and mid 80s. That, I mean, it's just humanistic looking things that, even though it kind of was like the heyday of, the galleries in New York and the commercialization of art, it's still, for us, when we go to museums, we always kind of look for that work, because a lot of it is kind of, I mean, it's just so bad. I mean, there was a whole period of painting called bad painting at that time too, that we both love, and the pictures generation painters and all of the arte povera artists that came from Italy and Europe. And I mean, we always look for that
huge, the
handmade stuff.
Like the Cornelis show at the Prada Foundation we saw together.
That was a really important
exciting
show for us.
We often come out of shows and of artists we admire, whether they're painters or performers or sculptors or whatever, and then we are like, oh, we want to like be sculptors or performers, or maybe we should just be actors, or like, it gives it like, we kind of like to like the work that makes us think of like beyond painting even.
Yeah. Yeah, we're always looking for ways out of painting too. Like I'm constantly trying to find a way to put something else into my painting that's not just self-referentiality or art history, or I spent so much time in school really trying to learn as much about painting as I could and look at as much painting. And I think I pigeonholed myself in a way when I was a student. And then when I moved to LA and became exposed to, a community of artists that was, not painting centric, at first it was really kind of mind blowing and then frustrating. But then I kind of like it now, because when I find artists that kind of do work similar or interested in things that I'm interested in, I immediately am like, I need to come to your studio and I need to, we should talk, and we should hang out. And it's like that community has become, at first it was daunting, but now it's kind of nice to be around actors and musicians and, all these different, on the East Coast is so, the painting scene is so academic and heavy, and it can be really frustrating sometimes, because it's almost like you're up against the pale of history in this funny way. But yeah, Gracie kind of like, when I moved to LA, she like dropped me into this painting scene with Tif and all these different, Joe Sola, and all of a sudden you're like, what, I can't believe this world existed, outside of, Georgia and New York.
Tinseltown.
Yeah.
Do you feel like now, obviously in this strange time that we're living in, you know, have you been able to have that community? Because looking and experiencing and dialogue is so much a part of your practice. Like, is that stifling, or is that almost kind of making you look more inward? You both.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things have changed, and we've been going through a lot, like including like getting deeper into our studios and more, you know, in a way, but also branching out more. Like we've both been writing, and sort of like seeing if, I mean, Andy writes songs, writes music, writes poetry, but also like I do like screenplays, and like we've been like, you know, kind of, because I think that's just, we've also been watching more like movies and stuff, and like getting into like thinking about performance and acting and just like more, a different kind of dialogue that, and then painting also, you know, but it's like,
we were both lucky to have solo shows before this happened. And I mean, it's those, you know, we both had really kind of intense years leading up to those shows, and both professionally and personally. And, you know, we got married, and it was, you know, so when the virus happened, we were kind of in these low points in our studio, like coming off the shows. And for me personally, I kind of picked up a whole new kind of practice with the writing and recording music, and just, it was kind of hard for me because I felt like it wasn't right to paint, you know, while so many people were out of work and like people, you know, things were going on in the world. I wanted to be out of my studio, and I also don't have any social media, so I couldn't see like what other artists were doing. And so I felt like I could just like drop out of the art world very briefly, like, you know.
Well, you do get a glimpse of it where like all of a sudden you're not, you know, going to openings or even, you know, seeing shows, or the even just like the gatherings once a week with like the same group of your homies who are like, you know, this is my show and this is what I'm working on. All that kind of just stops. And then you get a glimpse of like, the world that, I mean, we talk about worlds similar, not with pandemics, but in terms of how we would be working, maybe in a world where we were more disconnected from the city life, you know? So, I mean, we've contemplated it a lot since then, and there's some really hard things about it, and also some things that are really like, well, always going to affect your artwork, you know, which is like a good thing. We like to like feel like our work is changing, and like butting up against.
I mean, it has brought about a lot of new energy and change in our studios, which is great. But it's also, we really feel for our friends who, you know, were either on the verge of having a solo show or about to, you know, about to really like step into a new body of work. And I mean, there's a lot of artists out there that are hurting, and it's just, we've tried to, you know, do our best to reach out and, you know, just stay in touch and try to, you know, I have a lot of friends. I'm just now getting messages about, you know, hey, you know, we should do studio visits, or just try to keep the community going, because I think a lot of people were just so scared in the beginning. But I mean, now, it's a strange time in LA. I know it's like, it hasn't been as hard hit as other places, but in our community, there were, I mean, people giving up studios, and like it's just been
already. I've seen
there was a rough patch there, but
big changes. But
change, both good and bad, I guess. You know.
Yeah, I mean, when we have our studio artist program at Atlanta Contemporary, and we had open studios in May, and we have it again coming up in November. And just touching base, I mean, we had some artists, we had to shelter in place, and we had to prevent access to the studios because our campus was deemed not essential. When So, and when we did that, the artists weren't paying for the studio. It like kind of time stopped in terms of rent payments and things like that to support, our mission is to support working artists. But, at the same time, that almost, I know for some artists, they just stopped making work for that like 2.5 months, and like getting back into the studio. And, it's almost like they were just stuck for a long time. And then there are others that have never been more prolific because they could be like that change of space, changed perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, some people need chaos to focus, in finished bodies of work. And I've known lots of painters who, would finish their show the week before, just because, they're just insane. But like, yeah, that's true. Like it, and of course, for the artists who are already like, in the stratosphere, it's like business as usual for those guys. And, the blue chip galleries that, have
at the biggest PP.
Yeah. They've been waiting for the day, art fairs went online, so they didn't have to pay the booth fee. And, so the art world on that level continues on in its, own way. And we keep track of that too, because we know that, especially as painters, we value the human, one-on-one experience with the painting. And, the phenomenon of online viewing rooms and all of these kind of new developments, we're really like keeping an eye on, because, galleries will do whatever they can to maximize profit at that level, and we, especially painters and sculptors really gotta, watch out and say, my work needs to be seen,
Right.
in this way to really affect people, because it's, this thing's been a long time coming, I think. But that's the level, we're obviously not on that level, but it's, that's one other aspect of the virus that we've been kind of shocked to follow.
But it's so different in different places. Like, I think in New York right now, I wouldn't say it's completely normal, but like all my gallery friends in New York are saying like lots of people are coming in, and it's not as if it's back to normal, but like there's very much, still the same kind of system in place where people go to see shows, and viewership in general has sort of become, a bit of an issue. And yeah, it's an issue for artists. It's an issue for everybody, really. People should be going to look at work in person as much as they can. And it has been interesting having the gallery here because, there's like one thought that, maybe not as many people will see the show because it's in this small town. But actually, I've always found that even more people come to see the shows in person than did in LA, because people make special trips out to see things. And like, there aren't as many contemporary art galleries in the area. So it's kind of like a destination thing for some people. And it's kind of been a relief. The last few months have been hard for me because I haven't been in a physical space. My next show will open in November. And there's something that feels rotten about just doing shows online. I mean, I've done them and, in some sense they've worked or people see the shows, but it's not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, particularly, with Andy and Gracie's, paintings, the surfaces are so important. And I think, Andy, that's what, to be able to see the physicality of the paint and even, scale, that the paintings are smaller in scale, but when you just see it on Instagram or social media, you have no idea. I think that, that goes with every student in the world seeing the Mona Lisa for the first time and, exclaiming, it's so tiny. So, yeah. But I mean, Tif, as you kind of reopen, I mean, how do you expect things to go? Which sounds crazy.
I mean, I'm not going to have regular openings for a while. So I'm just doing daytime openings basically. And, everybody will have to wear a mask. I don't expect that there'll be like so many people that it would be an issue in terms of how many people would be in the space at a time. But then I'm also always like available by appointment to meet people to see shows. And, hopefully that will create a nice way for people to come see the work and spend more time with it. We'll see how it goes. I mean, people seem excited that the shows will start reopening, and the gallery is now in the small town Comer. I mentioned that there's a number of people who drive out there on Saturdays because there's this really good bakery there and this nice flower farm. So, maybe people will just make a day out of it coming from Athens. And it really felt like time to get out of downtown Athens, which is just like turned into UGA hell at the moment,
Right. Well, I mean, I will say, when we reopened and even having this exhibition up right now with She Is Here, people are wanting to seek out experiences that are not, going to the supermarket or, this digital kind of world. They're desperate for that intimacy and exploration of beauty. And so, I mean. Yeah,
I anticipate a lot of visitors. I mean, a lot of people already reached out to say they're going to make it from wherever they live to come see the shows. But I think people will be like excited to see things in person again. I certainly am. I haven't been to LA since this started. And before I was traveling back and forth quite a bit. And I myself feel starved to see work in person. It's really strange it's been great to watch a million movies in 7 months and to like kind of go through like the backlist of things like, oh, I should have seen that. But there's also like, it's also important to see other things. That's fine.
Yeah, we're gonna pass through Houston on our way back and go to the Manil.
Oh, cool.
And you make an appointment, which is like really, which is great. Cause then, there's
it's like the best way to see it anyways.
Yeah. So it's kind of,
that's what I've heard in New York, that people, like when the museums reopened, there are times when you'll go to like MoMA and be in a room by yourself, which just seems, it doesn't seem great for the museum to survive, but it seems great. It seems great for the artist or the viewers to have that.
Yeah, I'd love to walk through the Vatican right now, or like, or the Louvre, or like any of those museums where if you stand still for 1 minute, you'll get trampled by, like people with their iPads up like this, filming everything. But the Houston, we're staying there for 2 nights to see our friends, one of whom works at the Contemporary Art Museum there. And so, I've never seen that. So it'll be the first art I've seen since, the lockdown. So I'm looking forward to that. And seeing painting in real life is like one of those things. I value that a lot. And even when I was teaching painting at RISD, I would really, they have a world-class museum there on RISD's campus, and kids never went. And every day I would tell them, just walk, when you go to eat lunch, just walk through the museum and look at one thing. I mean, it's free, and it's also, there's no one there. So if you're going to like go on a date, take your date there first, just do anything to get into that museum, because those paintings there are, they're going to tell you different things at different times of day, at, different seasons. It's just, really one thing I preached on so hard, and then they would never listen, but it's like, I do miss going to the museum so much.
Actually, I'm an art historian, and when I was in graduate school, I had the privilege of getting into the Louvre an hour before it opened, because I was doing research, and it was definitely a surreal experience to walk these halls, and I kind of ran from piece to piece that I wanted to see by myself. And
you gotta
pretty magical. It was pretty magical. I will say that the Zoom has been really amazing, because we had somebody here earlier that was, we still do, who's in Canada. So it's been fun to see people like, you can travel digitally with the click of a fingertip.
Hi, I'm In-kyung Chun. I'm an artist, and I just saw your two paintings that small, tiny, really scale paintings that are contemporary, that really empty space, and then just two paintings together. So I was so wondering why it's so empty, and then just like tiny two paintings. And I just realized you both a couple and married. So congratulations. And paintings were so, it's small scale, but it was so powerful. And the colors are very like poetic and delicate and not really strong in a way. But I was so fascinated, like those two works. I mean, I want to stay there forever. So do you both, I'm just asking both of you, do you keep like your style? Do you have your own designated style in your making painting? Or when you see some other artists' work, then, this is such a great style, then may I imitate some part? So I'm just curious about that. Do you really stick to your own style, or you are trying to try a various style and then copy from another artist's work?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I first started painting, I went through kind of 5 or 6, I guess, like big kind of periods of imitation, and the last one was trying to, and it was like going through modernism and into like, American painting in the 50s and 60s. And then when I got to Philip Guston, I spent a lot of time with his work, and I looked at his brushwork for, years almost, like trying to find pieces of his paintings that really spoke to me, and I imitated a lot of his work. But then at some point after school, I started trying to get more from the painting itself just through chance, and kind of like keeping the paintings open for very long periods of time. And I was really adamant about not looking at any painting, because for so many years I had tried to imitate, those kind of like, painters from the canon. And now I've gotten to a place where I don't have any books in my studio. I don't have any photographs. I don't have anything. I just have, a bunch of weird woodworking tools and, a table with paint, and then, pieces of wood everywhere that I paint on. And it's just, so yeah, I've somehow managed to get to this point where I just don't look at any painting now unless I'm seeing it out in the world. And that's been really good for me. But
yeah, I have a kind of dual, I go back and forth. Like I use a lot of materials in my studio that already have marks on them that I've used in the past, like painting rags. And in this case, in the show, this painting happened to be on the back side of a old canvas that I had experimented with in the past. And when I came back into my studio during the beginning of the pandemic, instead of like buying new materials, I kind of like scaled down and started like looking at pieces of things I had, and in this particular instance, I worked with the image that was Poussin's image, but like kind of found its way in the marks that were already on the like stains, like,
that come through.
Yeah, that had come through, and like you find your line kind of, at the same time, his line, like working with the lines that already exist in the canvas. So I work that way a lot, but also I feel like so often I'll start by looking at images of a painter that I'm really into, depending on what they give me, like whether it's like a form or like a formal thing. Well, always a formal thing, usually, like whether it's like Asger and some like really spatial, like kind of wild energy, or something that I want to look at that's more geometric, like depending on the painter and what they give me, sometimes I'll start looking at that. And then usually over time in my studio, the works start getting more intertwined with each other and less involved with other people's work.
I see.
I'd say.
Yeah.
But I would say too that, painters have always had kind of like a tricky relationship with art history in terms of looking at, the canon and going to museums, and, you learn the ways painting was taught all throughout history, through like the early kind of guild systems all the way through the Renaissance and apprenticeships. And then when art schools became big, I guess after World War II or 50s and 60s, then you start to see like, artists, students going to galleries for inspiration instead of museum. And then, so there's kind of this whole alternate history of, painters looking at paintings and making paintings about painting. It can get really tricky. Yeah. And in art schools today, I really feel like there can be almost too much of a focus on, in critiques or in certain ways, let's say, go look at this artist, or like, go look at this, when in reality, they should just be saying like, go have life experience, or like, go do something else that can inform your painting that's not, looking directly at. And, today with social media and Instagram, you can be on an algorithm and you can see nothing but contemporary painting for hours and hours. Mm-hmm. And, that can be just as bad as, being obsessed with, Guston or Matisse or, so. But
also like to bring like the way we would, both of us in a similar way, like spend a lot of time with like, you're noticing the surfaces of the painting and the scale. Like, I feel like Andy will like, like touch his own paintings and like move and often cut them up even from bigger panels, which I also do in time. It just has to do with like honing in on like really the tactility of like what the object itself. And so we both spend time like really meditating or letting that inform us, whether you call that intuitive work or what, we both kind of like to have like touched every part of the thing before it leaves the studio. So
yes. I mean, I can feel that from tiny scale painting, but there are so many delicate layers and it's just really powerful. So I just realized it didn't happen like in a couple of days. So
it's a lot of time.
Right, a lot of time.
Sometimes interestingly, no time at all. Like you can have something building up forever and then come in one day and like it's done. We both kind of have that, but usually the thing has like accumulated some sort of essence over. Yeah. I mean, sometimes who knows, like years and years. Like both of us have stuff in our studio that we've just had forever. That's also been like indoors and outdoors, or like different places.
Some of the paintings I have in my studio I've been working on and off for 3 or 4 years, and some of them I've cut them down from bigger paintings, or I've been kicking them around, and it's kind of like waiting on a piece of wood to dry to like make it into an instrument or something. You're just like waiting for it to resonate. And it takes, sometimes it doesn't take long at all. And sometimes it takes, years. But I mean, I'm lucky to have the time, to wait around on these things. And I didn't always have that patience, but I've kind of gotten used to it now. And so that's my ideal studio situation is just, working and working and working. And then all of a sudden, you can hear the painting being like, I'm done, and that's it. So it's something you can't, it's like, it's so hard to explain. And it's whenever I give lectures or talks at colleges or to art students, I try not to talk about it, because they get so mad, it's because it's so wishy-washy, but it's the truth.
True.
It's the truth. Any artist or musician or actor, it can translate into really any art form. But yeah, it's a funny thing.
My dad always used to say that when we were cooking. I would ask him, like, how do you know it's done? And he would say, when it's done. Right. And I'd be like, well, how long? And he's like, there's so many variables that go into it. Tif, we have a question from someone for you. So this is from William Brereton. He's in Toronto, Canada. And he asks if you could share any professional takeaways from your time living in Los Angeles and how those insights or memories might inform your work in Georgia.
Well, I think when I opened the gallery in LA, I probably had the same, like intentions or idea for what it should be that I had in moving it here. And maybe, running a contemporary art gallery is like, of course, like part of it is a business and you have to kind of keep the thing going. But then I've never wanted to get so into that side that there wasn't space for all the other things that I wanted to do or other interests that I had. And so moving the gallery here kind of like felt at first like it was like making more space for that and kind of like making this new almost like model for like my interactions with the artists I work with. Like it's been interesting. I mean, now this is all shifted, but having all the artists I work with are like pretty close friends. And so having the gallery here has created this like special space for like spending time with people and I think like it's hard. You have to like, or for me, it's like, I get to know people's work through knowing them and like spending time with them and like observing it closely over time. And being here in a weird way has kind of like allowed me to do that in a different way, because like when people come, we spend like consolidated time with one another and almost like more like life kind of stuff. Like I have like a house where people stay usually. And so I don't know, I don't know if that really answers the question, but moving the gallery here and has like just kind of enabled me to keep doing things the way I wanted to do them to begin with.
Yes. Yeah, it'd be nice if there was a way for more galleries to be able to, get into the nooks and crannies of America and like be able to have these kinds of platforms, because there's so many towns like Athens and kind of in the Southeast especially that, have an abundance of artists and kind of even an overabundance, especially in Athens. There's so many people making art, pursuing art here that, having an outlet for contemporary art, it can really elevate, the town and expose. I mean, artists need exposure to other art, to grow. So it's one of those things where, I hope it continues. It's especially for the South in particular. It's such a unique part of the world, and in a way, slow to change. So it's
also, I think when I moved here, I thought of like, well, Athens is like known for its music, but all the music here that we know of really comes out of the art school here. So like art has always been important to Athens, visual art. And I've met so many interesting people since moving here, like characters that you'd be hard pressed to like find them in LA, but like here they just show up, and it does offer a different perspective on like also like the life of an artist, and how people choose to like where people choose to live, how they choose to spend their days. Like I've met a number of artists who have moved not necessarily to Athens, some to Athens, but some to just the region, who have left cities like New York and LA because they wanted more space and more time to make their work. And, and this kind of affords you that opportunity. So it has been eye-opening, interesting to see.
And I wonder too,
I think that shift is like increasing,
right,
as a result of the pandemic.
Right.
It seems like there's a wave of people leaving cities that was kind of starting, like similar to what Andy was saying, like a lot of this like internet art fair stuff was starting before the pandemic. And then the pandemic just kind of like really like blew open.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's also, I think, national funders and donors and foundations are also making consequential investments in non kind of typical cities as well. So, you have major foundations that are starting to invest in, Atlanta or Detroit or, spaces that are not your kind of prototypical spaces.
That's the thing I've liked about being here is that like, I feel like I'm part of a region rather than just a city now. Like when I do art fairs, I meet people. Like when Gracie and I did an Freeze art fair in New York shortly before I opened the space here. And it's like every single person who had ever lived in Athens or driven through came and introduced themselves to me. But then also it expanded beyond that, like now I feel like my collector base has grown to include people in North Carolina, Texas, like all the surrounding areas too. And I kind of like feeling like, that it's not just like this one place, but it's like this larger area,
And I think too, you become a representative. I was in Berlin for a conference a number of years ago now. And when I would introduce myself, but of course our name is Atlanta Contemporary, and people would say, "Oh, Atlanta, I just hear such good things about your city and the region." And that's just so wonderful that people because, we can be steeped in our own frustrations, and it's nice that people see us and want to support us. In Kyung, I know you had a question. Do you want to, I think you did.
Yes, I mean, yeah. So Tif, do you have any like preferable artistic style for your gallery? Because whenever I visit in Atlanta gallery like Sandra Hassan or White Space or Poem 88, the gallerists they pursue specific their own preference when they invite artists. So I'm just curious, do you have any of those specific preference?
I think it's actually kind of shifted over time. But I remember when I first opened the gallery, I represent artists who do a broad range or employ a broad range of kinds of work. I represent people who make sculptures, people who do conceptual art, people who make videos, paintings. And when I first opened the gallery, I remember a number of people saying like, there's this common kind of underlying tone of humor to like a lot of the work, even the very formal like sculptures of Lisa Williamson, and that seemed to be a through line, though I think it's evolved quite a bit. So I don't know that I would say that there's like one thing that I'm looking for, but I find connections between all of the artists who I work with or most of the artists who I work with work in one way or another. And it's a pretty small program, so.
I see. So taking quality of humor, you said?
Yeah, I mean.
Well, when we met, for example, it wasn't like, oh, let's have a studio visit and then you come work at the gallery. It was like, we basically just like, I was doing something like a performance kind of thing with another person in my garage. And then it was kind of like you walked by.
Oh, yeah.
You were there. And then we started just like walking and talking together.
Right.
And then in my studio, I had a lot of like different things going on. But then the work that evolved between us was more like literally like what we would talk about, like a performance. And then I'd make that happen. It wasn't really yet like about the objects in my studio. Yeah. And that like started evolving over time.
Well, like for instance, when Gracie and I, like, it wasn't when we first started spending time together, but an artist I work with who like I have an extremely collaborative relationship with, Joe Sola.
Yes.
He and I were working on this video project where we rented an art fair booth in Mexico City to shoot this short video he was making. And Gracie had just been kind of like coming to the gallery more often. It was really fun just hanging out there. And so we were like, do you want to be in this video that we're shooting in Mexico City? And she came. And then we all spent time together. And it's like, I think most of the relationships I have at the gallery have kind of worked that way, where they just evolve over time through a really more personal relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, I understand. I have one more question to artists. Is that okay? I mean,
Please.
I feel like I'm the only one who's asked.
No, go for it.
Yeah. So right now it's COVID, you said, right? And you said you almost give up painting and then making music and do another stuff.
Yeah.
But obviously you are a painter and you both are your work are really amazing. So I don't think you should give up painting.
Yeah.
But,
That's what I think.
Sound like Tif.
right, but still, I mean, as an artist right now, that you said that COVID really hit hard all over the world, and then specifically in United States, there is like a second civil war is happening. So
Sure.
Whenever I meet my close friends here, and then the art scene, art world is really evolving in a way, and then which direction is right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's your next goal? What's your next work series? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I never try to plan out bodies of work really like other, I know there's in painting there. I have a lot of friends in LA that are painters, and they really work from show to show, or they come up with an idea for a show and then make a body of paintings. But I've always kind of been the kind of artist that needed a natural, organic kind of progression that followed the work itself and didn't really follow anything having to do with the career or the world or anything, I mean, I've never made anything close to work that addressed, politics or personal beliefs or anything like that. And for no other reason that my work has just never took me there, and it's just, for me, I'm really kind of the type of artist that needs, I need a lot of time to think about what I'm doing, and I need a lot of time to let my work kind of work on me, and that's, I mean, that equates to like a lot of time in the studio, and then also a lot of time just trying to just get out of the studio and pursue other things in life. But yeah, so I haven't made plans really. I have a solo show next year in Brussels at the gallery that I work with in LA, and I haven't really even thought much about what I'm going to make for it. I know I'm going to have to at some point, have the paintings ready, but I just kind of work and then try to see what happens. I'm just so addicted to that like chance aspect of painting. I can't stop working that way. So, but.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really like, I love being in the studio, like on my own, and like just for out, like, if I can, like doing that. So I'm excited to like spend more time just like finishing up, say, just like, a body of work that's going on in there. But I have also had like, I think I always have impulse to maybe, like do performance again or something. And, but it always has to do with the performance stuff has much more to do with like the climate or like what I'm going through in my life, or like what the art world is going through, or like some relationship I have in the art world. And I think I'm getting like some ideas that are like happening because of just the watching things change and shift in the art world right now. But that'll be an interesting thing to see, like when live kind of performance with an audience can happen again. I mean, I love the theater, and like doing, stuff like that. So I'm definitely like, I don't see it really like when it's going to happen, or I don't know when it's going to happen, but I've been starting to have like visions of how it could happen in certain spaces in LA or something like that, gallery.
Thank you.
I have a question that's just super personal because I'm always so, just curious. But Andy and Gracie, how did you two meet?
Through Tif.
Good question.
Are you willing to share the story? I'm always just so fascinated by how people meet.
Well, after I got out of grad school, I was living in Athens. I came back to Athens, and I was working as a carpenter and remodeling some houses in town. And my best friend, Jody, called me one day and he was like, hey, we should go to Los Angeles to work there because I have some friends there in the art world and there's a house there we can live in while we work and it'll be fun. And at that time I was just like ready to do anything and I was happy to travel. And so we get there and we ended up working on Tif's house one day. I think we were like doing her plumbing underneath her house or something. And then she was like, hey, you should stay we're having a potluck dinner for the gallery. And we were like, okay.
Oh, that was that.
Yeah. And so then me and my friend Jody stayed, and then Gracie and I met that night.
In the yard.
In the yard, yeah. But we only really talked for like, 5 seconds, I think. And then I think we went on a date like the next week. But I was also living out of like a backpack, at that time. And I didn't have a car. And I think I took a train into LA from like the outskirts. And we ended up, we went on a date. And then I was pretty certain like I wanted to move to LA like right away. So I went back to Georgia and like sold everything I owned and like got a U-Haul truck and we drove back to LA together.
Time we drove across from Georgia to LA, and then since then we've done it a couple other times.
But I drove Gracie all around Georgia and like introduced her to my family and took her kind of like introduced her to the South and
and I've taken Andy to Malibu.
So, we had to like
coast to coast
teach each other about different parts of the country. But it was pretty lucky, because I definitely didn't have anything going on. I was like a dropout at that point. I was so frustrated with the art world and with making art. And after I was kind of like, I had this moment at RISD where I'd been painting so hard and like working so hard to get to this point. And then, afterwards, nothing happened. And I was just like, oh, I need to like go do something completely different and not paint for a while. And so, we met at just the right time. I was about to quit for good, but
meant to be.
Yeah.
Gracie, had you ever been to Georgia before?
Actually, no, I hadn't. Never been. Maybe flew through Atlanta, but no, like it was amazing. Yeah, first place I went was down in Brunswick to one of the islands, St. Simon.
Oh yeah,
amazing. I mean, I love it here.
This is my son Saul.
Oh yeah, here's Saul.
Hi.
There he goes. But yeah, I'm pretty blown away by it here. I like spending time here.
Awesome.
It's a good place.
Good.
Kids are back, so
yeah, exactly.
Good time.
Yeah, probably a good time. Well, if no one else has any questions, since Tif's beautiful family has returned to the homestead, we'll go ahead and close it out. But Andy and Gracie, thank you so much for being here and sharing your work with us in Atlanta and at Atlanta Contemporary. And we hope that you drive home safely across the country in the next couple of days. And I'm jealous that you're going to be at the Menil. So please tell it hello from me.
All right.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Be well.
Bye.
Bye-bye.